Do you remember 2008? A financial earthquake that shook the world.
Excuse me, sir, how are you feeling?
How do you think?
Many believe the crisis is over, but that's not the case. Today, we take you on a journey through 10 European cities that never truly recovered. They're not necessarily the 10 most affected overall, and we invite you to share more in the comments. But we selected them from different countries to understand one thing: why were some more vulnerable than others? What mistakes did they make? Stay with us until the end, because in the conclusion, we'll summarize the main causes that led them to decline, and we'll see how tragically many of them don't seem to have learned the lesson. Welcome to Amazing Europe. Number 1. Valencia, Spain. Before 2008, 1 in 4 new homes built in Europe was in Spain, and Valencia was one of the epicenters of this expansion, the symbol of a collective euphoria fueled by easy credit. It hosted the America's Cup, a Formula One Grand Prix, and inaugurated iconic architectural works. This wasn't just tourism, it was the manifestation of an economic boom that seemed unstoppable. The unemployment rate had dropped below 9%, a mirage by Spanish standards, while housing prices had nearly tripled in less than a decade, creating an illusion of widespread wealth. But this house of cards, built on almost unlimited bank debt, was destined to collapse. When global finance came to a halt in 2008, the impact was brutal. The construction sector, the engine of the entire region, imploded, leaving behind abandoned construction sites like monuments to a bygone era. Unemployment skyrocketed to 29% in 2013, with youth unemployment exceeding 55%. Housing prices plummeted by up to 40%, trapping thousands of families with mortgages worth more than the value of their own property. Today, the tourist strolling through the city centre sees a vibrant city. However, beneath this surface lie the deep scars of that crisis. Many of the new jobs are tied to low value-added tourism, often seasonal and poorly paid. The colossal debt left by the major events weighed on public services for years. Valencia is the archetype of a two-speed recovery. Its unsustainable pre-crisis model, based on excess and debt, has left behind a weaker economy and unresolved social insecurity. Number 2. Riga, Latvia. Latvia seemed to have found the magic formula for success when, in the 2000s, it consistently recorded GDP growth rates exceeding 10% per year. Riga, its capital, was an open-air construction site, the symbol of an almost limitless euphoria. With unemployment falling below 6%, an unprecedented real estate boom doubled housing prices, fueled by a flood of low-cost credit granted mainly by Scandinavian banks. But behind this golden facade, a ticking time bomb was hidden. Most of the loans to citizens and businesses were not in the local currency, but in euros. This house of sand, built on foreign currency debt, disintegrated in an instant when global finance came to a halt in 2008. The capital flight was immediate and devastating. Latvia plunged into one of the world's deepest recessions, with GDP collapsing by 18% in 2009 alone. The euro debt trap snapped shut. While wages in local currency were slashed, euro-denominated mortgages became unsustainable. Unemployment soared above 20%, and property prices plummeted by more than 50%, dragging thousands of families into bankruptcy. Today, Riga presents itself as a phoenix risen from the ashes. It has adopted the euro, and the economy has regained stability. And yet, even if it has partially recovered economically, the crisis left behind a massive wound. Demographic collapse, ruthless austerity, and a lack of hope pushed hundreds of thousands of young people to leave their country, causing the loss of a large part of its human capital. The economic recovery happened on paper, but its social and demographic fabric has never truly healed from that shock. Number 3. Liverpool, United Kingdom. In 2008, while the financial world was collapsing, Liverpool was celebrating its best year. Named European Capital of Culture, the city was undergoing a spectacular revival after decades of devastating post-industrial decline. Unlike Valencia or Riga, this was not a bubble economy, but a wounded community that was proudly, finally rising again. But the hard blow did not come directly with the financial crisis, rather with a political decision that followed. To cover the enormous national debt created by the 2008 bank bailouts, the new British government that took office in 2010 launched a harsh austerity policy. The logic was to balance the books, but the method was brutal. Instead of being fair, the cuts mainly affected the money transfers from central government to local councils. Being a historically poorer city and more dependent on those funds compared to the wealthy cities in the south, Liverpool suffered one of the harshest shocks in Europe, seeing its municipal budget cut by more than 60%. Today, Liverpool's tourist centre shines, but it hides a deep social divide. In some areas of the city, the child poverty rate reaches an alarming 40%, nearly 10 points above the already high national average. As a result, dependence on food banks, originally intended as an emergency solution, has become a structural and chronic reality for thousands of families, not only for the unemployed, but also for those with low-paying jobs. Today's Liverpool is a two-speed city, with deep social fractures that a renovated city centre cannot hide. Number 4. Taranto, Italy. Few cities in Europe embody the concept of a mono-industrial economy like Taranto. For decades, its fate was dictated by a single name, Ilva, one of the largest steel plants on the continent. This giant was the ultimate engine, providing thousands of stable jobs in a fragile region. But it was a dark pact. Even before the crisis, scientific studies showed a dramatic excess in cancer-related mortality, up to 15% higher than average, and an alarming incidence of acute respiratory diseases among children. This was the unspoken normality, accepted in exchange for apparent stability, with youth unemployment already at a worrying 35%. The global financial crisis revealed how illusory and deadly that certainty truly was. Taranto is the perfect example of how an economic shock can strike indirectly, but with the force of a hurricane. The global recession halted construction and the automotive industry, which in turn caused a collapse in steel demand. For Ilva, it was a fatal blow. Production plummeted, temporary layoffs became the norm, and the company entered a never-ending financial crisis, made worse by an environmental and legal disaster. Today, Taranto is a city stuck, trapped in a dying industry and lacking any alternative economy. The employment disaster is plain to see. Youth unemployment peaked above 60% and still stands steadily above 45%, more than triple the European average. It is the tragic symbol of a community that entrusted its future to a single pillar, only to watch it crumble. Number 5. Charleroi, Belgium. Like Taranto, Charleroi tied its fate for over a century to a single vocation: heavy industry. It was the capital of Belgium's Black Country, an economic engine based almost entirely on coal and steel. But when that era began to fade, already decades before 2008, the city entered a slow and relentless decline. With unemployment already above 15%, the global financial crisis did not hit a thriving economy, but a body already severely weakened. The 2008 recession delivered the final blow. It wiped out demand for the products of the last remaining metalworking industries, pushing unemployment above 20% and youth unemployment beyond the 40% threshold. It dried up investments, leaving behind industrial skeletons that dominate a landscape of decay and abandonment, and earning the city the unfortunate reputation of being the ugliest city in the world, according to a survey by a well-known Dutch newspaper. However, it is precisely from this rock bottom that Charleroi seems to have learned the lesson that Taranto still struggles to absorb. Today, although still battling an unemployment rate that remains twice the national average, the city is actively building a future based on diversification. It is decisively investing in technology hubs like the biopark, in aerospace, and in the digital sector. It is the example of an extremely difficult climb, the conscious attempt to never again rely on a single pillar. A slow transition that has not yet solved all of its social problems, but that has at least drawn a path out of the past. Number 6. Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sarajevo is the most tragic story on this list. Before 2008, it was not experiencing an economic boom, but a slow and hopeful reconstruction following the devastating siege of the 1990s. It was a patient in full convalescence, whose survival depended almost entirely on a drip of foreign capital, international aid, remittances from the diaspora, and the first reconstruction investments. A self-sustaining domestic economy was almost entirely absent. Its recovery was a fragile shell propped up from the outside. The 2008 financial crisis exposed the lethal fragility of this model. It abruptly cut off that drip. Foreign investment, vital to the city's rebirth, collapsed by over 65% and never returned. The crisis revealed an uncomfortable truth. Without an internal economic engine, Sarajevo's stability was an illusion. Youth unemployment exploded, exceeding peaks of 60%, becoming one of the highest in the world and triggering a chronic brain drain that continues to bleed the country of its future. Today, the city is trapped in limbo. Economic stagnation has acted like poison, worsening Bosnia's already deep and unresolved political and ethnic tensions. It has created a vicious cycle in which political paralysis blocks economic reforms, and economic frustration fuels distrust and division. Sarajevo teaches us a brutal lesson. No reconstruction can be lasting if it relies solely on external support, and no economy can prosper on a foundation mined with political and ethnic fractures. Number 7. Thessaloniki, Greece. To tell the story of the Greek crisis, the obvious choice would be Athens, with its iconic protests in Syntagma Square. But we chose Thessaloniki because its story, though less covered by the media, reveals the crisis's impact on the real economy. While Athens, the centre of political and financial power, suffered from public sector cuts, Thessaloniki witnessed the collapse of its productive fabric, the true backbone of the community. Before 2008, it was a dynamic commercial hub for the Balkans, a vibrant university city whose economy relied on a dense network of small and medium-sized enterprises. Then, the sovereign debt crisis swept through Greece, and the solution came in the form of a tsunami of austerity. Drastic cuts to salaries and pensions crushed consumer spending, suffocating shop owners and family-run businesses. Unlike Athens, where large corporations and the state resisted the blow more effectively, here the credit crunch caused small industries to collapse one after another. Unemployment exploded, surpassing 30%, but the figure that marked an entire generation was youth unemployment, which skyrocketed to an incredible 65%. For a young person, finding a job became statistically impossible. Today, tourism has brought life back to Thessaloniki's city centre, but it is a fragile lifeline. Beneath the surface, the scars run deep. Its industrial and manufacturing base has never recovered, while things have gone somewhat better in the capital. But the true tragedy of Thessaloniki was the massive brain drain. An entire generation of talented young people left the city, taking with them the potential for any real recovery. Number 8. Nicosia, Cyprus. While the world was drowning in the 2008 crisis, Nicosia seemed like a happy island. The capital of Cyprus was the centre of an oversized banking system. The total amount of money managed by the island's banks was 8 times the size of its national GDP. Cyprus functioned as a Switzerland of the Mediterranean. Thanks to low taxes and minimal regulation, it attracted a flood of foreign capital, especially from Russia, giving Cyprus one of the lowest unemployment rates in Europe, below 4%. It was an economic model built on a single, extremely powerful certainty: trust in its financial system. Disaster, however, came like a backwash, triggered by the collapse of neighbouring Greece. The main Cypriot banks had exposed themselves for billions in Greek government bonds. When Greece defaulted in 2012, their collapse became inevitable, and Cyprus was forced to request an international bailout. But the solution was unlike any other. In March 2013, instead of a standard public bailout, the European institutions imposed a traumatic and unprecedented choice: a bail-in. Essentially, to save the banks, they took a portion of money directly from the wealthiest bank accounts, those over €100,000, turning customer savings into capital to fill the financial gaps. It was an event that destroyed not only wealth, but also the soul of the Cypriot economic model: trust. Unemployment soared to 16%, the country fell into a deep recession, and thousands of small businesses lost their liquidity. Today, Nicosia has diversified its economy, and the numbers have improved. But the psychological scar left by that decision has never truly healed. Number 9. Vilnius, Lithuania. Before 2008, Vilnius was nurturing an ambitious dream to become Europe's tech hub, a vision that seemed within reach. But this glass castle rested on dangerously fragile foundations, built on a triple dependency that would prove fatal. The Lithuanian capital had shaped an economic model entirely dependent on external forces, foreign capital from multinationals like Barclays and Western Union, drawn by low costs and skilled talent. Foreign credit from Scandinavian banks that fueled an explosive real estate boom, turning every corner of the city into a construction site, and a heavily export-oriented economy reliant on global demand. With unemployment falling to an incredible 4%, the system seemed like a flawless, unstoppable economic machine. The 2008 crisis brutally exposed the illusion of this apparent prosperity. Like a wild chain reaction, all pillars collapsed simultaneously. Foreign investment froze instantly. Credit vanished, causing the housing bubble to burst, and demand for exports collapsed. The result was severe. Lithuania's GDP plunged by 15% in just 1 year, while unemployment quadrupled, reaching 18%. Today, Vilnius proudly celebrates its rebirth as the capital of European fintech, a widely admired success story. And yet, behind the shine lies an unsettling truth. The city never learned the most important lesson. It has merely replaced one dependency model with a more sophisticated one, becoming a large, low-cost branch office for multinational giants. The economy remains vulnerable to strategic decisions made in London or New York, where a shift in corporate direction can wipe out thousands of jobs overnight. Before revealing the 10th city, if you found this video informative, we kindly ask you to support our project by giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. And don't forget to check out our new channel, America vs. Europe, where we compare all European countries, the United States, and Canada across a range of different factors. Number 10. Marseille, France. Unlike other cities crushed by the 2008 crisis, Marseille didn't collapse. It was split in two. Even before the recession, it was a city of deep contradictions. On one side, a vital port. On the other, vast pockets of poverty. To address this, a massive redevelopment project, Euro-Mediterranee, was already transforming the city centre into a modern district for business and elite tourism. The financial crisis acted like a perfect wedge, accelerating this division. It hit the traditional economy hard, reducing traffic through the industrial port and causing layoffs in manufacturing, further impoverishing working-class neighbourhoods. At the same time, the Euro-Mediterranee project, backed by massive public and private investment, didn't stop. In fact, it kept going full speed ahead, attracting high-income professionals and driving up property values in the redeveloped city centre. This is how, during a crisis, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The recession destroys opportunities for the base, while selective redevelopment creates new value for the top. The result today is a nearly irreparable social divide. In the northern districts, youth unemployment consistently exceeds 40%, and the poverty rate has reached a staggering 50%, more than triple the national average. The crisis didn't so much destroy Marseille as it created a showcase city for a privileged minority, sacrificing opportunity and stability for the many. It left behind a social rift so deep that France is still struggling to close it. At the end of our journey, we ask ourselves a question: why were these cities hit harder than others? From our analysis, 5 common patterns emerge. First of all, their economy was excessively dependent on a single source. Many cities made the mistake of putting all their bets on one single industry or one single path to growth instead of diversifying. Another decisive factor was the city's and the nation's excessive reliance on the foreign economy. Over-relying on exports and foreign multinationals as the primary source of employment at the expense of a stronger local economy proved to be fatal. Then, the crisis undoubtedly hit harder in cities that were already in decline or had deep social divisions, acting as a final blow. It's not true that economic crises always affect everyone equally. Quite often, the wealthy manage to recover over time, while the poor become even poorer. Another common pattern was using too much debt. Both citizens and local governments borrowed excessively and recklessly. When the crisis struck, they had no money left and were crushed under the weight of their debts. And of course, we cannot fail to mention the politicians. Quite simply, some of them chose the wrong cure. After the crisis, certain political decisions, such as drastic, across-the-board cuts to public spending, ended up suffocating the economy even further instead of helping it recover. Do you think there are other causes? What solutions could help prevent this kind of crisis from happening again? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And since we are currently going through another crisis, the inflation crisis, we invite you to watch this video where we rank all the countries of the European Union based on the increase in food expenses over the past 10 years. That's all for this video. See you next time.